welcome Formula One to Indianapolis.
F1's cool!
Thanks for coming and welcome to America.
Formula One returns to the USA. After a 9-year absence, there is massive expectation for the first American Grand Prix at Indianapolis. And hello there, welcome to our coverage of the qualifying hour. They call this place the racing capital of the world, and it's very hard to disagree. They have spent an absolute fortune to bring the race here, and the intention is for Indianapolis to become the permanent American home of Formula One. Now then, Tony Jardine. Indy on show this weekend.
Well, I mean, they're great at razzmatazz, aren't they? They've been at it for 91 years, and we're going to have the full pom-poms, cheerleaders, marching bands a lot, but this is their Coliseum. This is their theatre of motorsport in the round, if you like. But it's amazing. The local paper said that a new breed is descending on Indianapolis. They said instead of the baseball-hatted, beer-swilling, cut-off jean variety, there's, you know, them strange Europeans in dark suits sipping champagne. Well, I haven't seen any of it yet.
It's a warm one. There's 25 degrees and 77 degrees humidity. Well, last time out we saw the gentle side of Michael Schumacher breaking down in that press conference after winning the last European Grand Prix of the season. That victory, though, totally overshadowed by the death of track marshal Paolo Ghislimberti.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but this is your 41st victory, which puts you equal second all-time with Ayrton Senna. Do those records mean a lot to you?
Yes, it does mean a lot to me. Sorry.
Michael Schumacher's emotional victory last time out in Monza put fresh life into the World Championship and virtually guaranteed that the title will go down to the last race. Schumacher's tears were brought on by a mixture of the crowd's enthusiasm and his own memories of Ayrton Senna, whose tally he had equalled. Possibly there was also some relief that Ferrari had finally made the most of the development parts, which had not worked for them at Spa. The way Ferrari won in Monza has given them confidence.
It for sure helps the motivation and it gives an extra push. Yeah, you can't deny that. At the end of the day, whether this weekend it will really make us faster, I don't really think so.
Schumacher believes that the cars are now so close that the title will come down to who gets the setup right at each of the remaining circuits.
Our cars are very close in competition and you have to maximize your opportunities, and you have seen a couple of times this year we couldn't achieve this and other times we did, and the other way around for McLaren, and whoever gets it right, he will be leading the race.
Tuning a car into this new circuit presents a fresh challenge, but the signs are that this track is easier than expected to master. It's sure to be a close fight for pole today.
3 to go then. Michael Schumacher still second favourite to win the Drivers' Championship. Hakkinen is odds-on. Coulthard has gone very well so far. Barrichello hasn't scored for a couple of races, and it is 3 months since Fisichello's last point. And in the constructors, there's a 4-point gap between the heavyweights, McLaren and Ferrari. Williams, well, they're finishing the season with a real flourish. Benetton looks set for 4th ahead of Jordan and BAR. Well, let's take a look at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, founded back in 1909. You know, there is seating for over 300,000 people here. Your Indy guides are Louise Goodman, and first of all, it's James Allen.
Perhaps the single most impressive thing about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway are the grandstands. There's over 1.5 miles of unbroken stands around this track, and when they use the full oval for the Indy 500, that means 320,000 seated spectators. Now, the Formula One track doesn't use the full oval, but nevertheless, 200,000 people will be sitting where I'm sitting now.
The Indianapolis circuit has been owned by the George family for the past 50 years, and Tony George, the current head, has just spent $50 million upgrading the facilities for Formula One. Now, part of that money has been spent on the new pit facility that you can see behind me. There are new garages for the teams, hospitality suites up above for the sponsors, and right down at the far end, that new tower, the Pagoda as it's known, where the media will work.
Well, this is America, where big is beautiful, and that extends to pit lanes as well. This one's about half as wide again as Silverstone, and probably 3 or 4 times the width of the Monaco pit lane. Now, it's interesting to look at this area here, because this is where the Indy pit crews operate. And they hang out here, and they go diving over the wall to do the fuel stops and the tyre changes. Now, the organisers didn't want to disrupt the arrangements for the Indy 500, just for the Formula 1, but it's presented the Formula 1 teams with a bit of a problem.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems will be when it comes to signalling to the drivers during the race. Now, normally if I was stood here, I would be stood on the racetrack. But here at Indianapolis, there's this second bit of no man's land separating the engineers from what is effectively a second pit wall. This is where the pit signallers will be operating this weekend, hanging their boards out over this rather low piece of Armco. Now, don't be surprised to see quite a few of the teams setting their signallers back further down this pit straight to get them away from that high-speed last turn. Rather them than me.
No visit to Indianapolis would be complete without coming to see the Yard of Bricks. This place is known as the Brick Yard because this was the original surface of the whole 2.5 mile oval. 2 things to say about this. Number 1, these bricks have a lot less grip than the asphalt, so it's actually going to be a disadvantage for the pole sitter. And number 2, the competitors traditionally at Indianapolis kiss the bricks before the start of the race. Can you really imagine Michael Schumacher doing this?
The new gentle Michael Schumacher, you never know. Well, all season there's been a glint in the driver's eyes, the prospect of driving an F1 car around the famous Indy banking. They're going to be hitting speeds over 220 miles an hour down that long straight. The infield is tight and a little bit tricky. Jack, though, a champion in 1995. First impressions from Jacques Villeneuve now as he talks to Martin Brundle.
Jack, you're used to going down here at 240 miles an hour and not lifting the throttle into turn 1. I bet you 100 quid you never thought you'd be going over these start line bricks, but going that way instead.
No, I never thought we'd be going the other way around, and I'll have to remember not to turn left but right. But I didn't remember it being so impressive, though. We used to be flat around the whole lap, but when you look at it, you wonder how you were doing that.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to be back.
So now you're going to be hurtling down here. I mean, what are you expecting for the top speeds down there towards turn 1?
Oh, that's going to be very fast. It's quite a long straight line. We should be in the 350s, I guess, 350k, yeah.
I've got a feeling. It depends how much wing you've got to run to get around the rest of the racetrack, I guess.
Yeah, but it looks like we're probably going to run a very low, quite a low downforce. Should be exciting.
Yeah, let's take a look at that turn 1. I mean, it's an enormous distance down the straight. It's only a just over 2.5 mile circuit, but the first straight is incredible. And then you've got this very wide entry into quite a tight corner.
Yeah, the speeds are going to be high. We're going to run low downforce on a long straight line, heavy braking. But the thing is, the entrance being so wide, we're going to carry the brakes very late into the corner, and that can make it quite exciting.
I can see drivers jumping this little curb here and taking a shortcut across there.
Well, the thing is, you're probably going to take more risk than you would other places and just dive on the inside, hoping to still make it on the correct side of the curb. But there's a good chance that people will end up on the wrong side of the curb. Maybe we don't even need that curb, just have quick apex or something. I think you're probably going into third and finish the corner into second gear because it is actually quite tight, and the tarmac changes, it goes down then up again, so it's going to be a strange corner.
Jack, we're into the infield then. It looks quite sweeping, quite nice actually.
It seems like it's got a good rhythm. Just at the end of the straight you have a couple of, the slow bit, and then you accelerate into a long sweeper to hit the brakes while you're still turning into this infield corner that seems to be quite quick. So looks like it's going to be a very good track to drive on actually, and quite difficult. The other thing is, this track being full of sweepers, you drive more with a rhythm than with a visual points. It's more tracks where you have a long straight line, just brake, turn, accelerate again, that use visual points. But when it's a bunch of sweepers, it's more kind of a rhythm. You know that you've been accelerating for 2 seconds and you should be braking about now, and so you get in a rhythm like that. But I think it's a track where you can muscle the car around also, looking at it, because if you manage to do one of the corners well and keep the rhythm, you'll be quick in 3, 4, 5 corners, where if you make a mistake, you'll lose time in the next 3 corners. So I think that's a good trend.
Here we are then, Jack, at turns 9 and 10. Looks a little bit tight and unnecessary to me.
Well, it looks tight and unnecessary. It looks like it's been put there just so we would have a couple of tight corners, and there's no logic behind it. But The first one seems okay. It's the second one that's really, really, really tight. And I think every lap we're going to get there, we're going to think, oh, darn, I was having so much fun until this point.
All right, let's look at this great banked last corner then. It's just a 9-degree banking, but it looks more than that, doesn't it?
And it feels a lot more than that. When you're in the car, you don't, through the corner, you don't feel it. But when you're looking at it driving and you're getting into it, and it does look very, very impressive. The thing is, the higher you run, the more distance you use. But at the same time, what you notice in oval, if you run high, you don't pick speed up going into the apex, but you don't lose going out, because when you come out of the corner, you actually have to go uphill if you're very low in the corner, which eats a couple of kilometers. But if you stayed high, you didn't accelerate as much, but at least you accelerate better out of the corner. So I guess it just depends on the way the car is set up.
So Villeneuve and the BAR, does it look good for you?
I think so, yeah. We've been good with low downforce this year, and this looks like a track where we should shine, so I'm really going to work hard on it.
Looks good so far as well. Villeneuve 5th yesterday and 8th today. Let's just take a check on what the drivers make of the Indy experience. They wanted to experience every second they could. Bit of a traffic jam to get out there early. David Coulthard was actually quickest on the first day. I reckon the overall impression is that banking isn't a real problem, but the infield is very tight.
Technically, to find the right balance to the car and setup through that banking is a very, very complicated, very difficult. You know, if you don't have a right balance, you are slow through that.
It's easy flat, so it's not really a challenge, but it makes you feel like a racing driver when you're going all fast through a bank corner like that, so it's fun.
There's two very tight corners, and these ones have no reasons for being there. The first part of the track is very intricate. It's difficult to drive, so that's interesting.
The oval corner is a bit easier to do than what I thought. I mean, it's easy flat. So maybe if it rains, then it becomes a bit more difficult. But I like it. I like it. I mean, the whole thing is such a great thing.
There's smiles on a lot of drivers' faces around here. Tony, what are your first impressions of the new circuit at Indianapolis?
Well, a fabulous facility and a fabulous job done to use part of the existing track and then this new infield. Very, very smooth. I was actually quite lucky because I sneaked into the safety car with Diniz and Zonta and went around, sat in the back and listened to their comments firsthand. And they kept taking the car over the curbs, which are quite serrated. But they don't think the banking, as you said, is a big, big problem. They're worried about tyres. They say if the rain comes, then the banking will be a problem. It will be a big bend. So, and it's concrete wall down there. First one to eat the concrete, for the record, was Johnny Herbert, who smashed into it yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, it's worth just emphasising, I think, how important it is for Formula One to get this weekend right.
There's no question. I spoke to David Coulthard in Monza. I said, I hope everyone's going to make a big effort, because to have a genuine world championship, you've got to have a big footprint in the United States of America. And now with this permanent home, it should happen. But it's a big education process with the American public. And that means communication. It means making an effort, talking to the press. And, the Formula One boys don't always like doing that.
They all start from almost a level playing field here, don't they? And Jenson Button seems to have profited from that.
Yeah, he does. Even though he's out in the cold now, incidentally, he's not getting all the technical information or doing all the testing because he's off to Benetton out on loan. But he's been quick out of the blocks early, as he did at Spa, and this is very, very impressive from Button as well. And he's had a second place, a couple of fourth places, and he's doing a great job again.
Okay, let's have a brief word with Jenson Button himself, shall we? Here he is chatting down there in the pits to Louise Goodman.
Jenson, everyone's been talking about the problems of learning a new track, but it's business as usual for you, isn't it? Has that given you an advantage?
I think so. It doesn't seem to be looking bad at the moment. But as you said, I've had a lot of practice with learning circuits this year.
How are you finding this place?
It's good. Excellent. The circuit's pretty good. A lot of the corners are very difficult because they're off-cambered on the exits. It means you get a lot of wheel spin, but seems to be working well, the car here, so we'll see what happens in qualifying. But I'm pretty happy.
Are you optimistic for qualifying?
Yeah.
The smile says it all.
It does indeed. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Good luck.
Thanks.
His dad, John Button, did a bit of a Hitchcock there, didn't he? Walked through the back of the shot, didn't he? A brief final word from you about the qualifying session.
Well, I think it's going to be really, really close because it's so wide in so many places, and you've got a great flow in the first part of the infield. I don't think there'll be that many excuses about I was balked. and I think there's going to be minuscule amounts between the top guys.
Thanks very much indeed, Tony. Well, despite their poor showings on the track, Jaguar have continued to beat the promotional drum. David Coulthard has done his bit as well, driving a yellow cab round the streets of New York. Different teams, but the same message. F1 is back in the USA. Qualifying comes next. You are back with us at the Brickyard, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rain is threatened for the qualifying session for the American Grand Prix. Here is Martin Brundle and Murray. Have a nice day, Murray.
It's going to be a great day, Jim. I have to keep pinching myself to realise that we're in America, and not only in America, but at Indianapolis. I came here in 1993 for the world-famous Indy 500 to see Nigel Mansell nearly, but not quite, win it. It's very, very different today. And how different from the last American Grand Prix, which was held as a street race at Phoenix in 1991. This is really the big one. And David Coulthard is lining up there, ready to come out on the track in the McLaren. And I'm expecting it to be, as you said yourself, enormously close. This morning in the final practice session, only 9/10 of a second covered the first 9 men, with Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello fastest in the 2 Ferraris. David Coulthard was third, Mika Häkkinen down in 4th place, and Jenson Button, as he was in Belgium, a quite sensational man. He was 4th fastest this morning. Your expectations, Martin?
Well, they're at the end of the pit lane very, very early. I mean, Coulthard's going to be the best part of a minute and a quarter, so they've got to be careful the cars don't overheat, but they clearly want to get onto the racetrack and get a banker lap in because the sky is looking dark. And look at Häkkinen creeping up the inside there to give himself pole position to get out onto the racetrack first. A little bit naughty, but I can't imagine that breaks any regulations, and a very, very crafty move there from Mika Häkkinen to get track position so he knows he won't have any traffic in front of him. And I'm really expecting all 22 cars to take to the track immediately. Big, big crowd here for the qualifying. Not as big as we're going to see tomorrow, but thankfully they're not going to be scratching their heads, the American crowd, wondering why on earth the track is open, but for 20 minutes nothing was happening. It's not going to be that way today. Already plenty of action on the racetrack.
Yeah, Mika Häkkinen needs to get out early. I don't think he was at all happy this morning. He was nearly 6/10 of a second off the pace this morning, just 5th fastest, and he wants to improve on that and get right up on the front row of the grid for tomorrow's American Grand Prix. You see the golf course at Indianapolis on the left of them as they go down towards turn 8, and this is the twisty section coming up. That's about the only thing that's been mildly criticised by some of the drivers. Turns 9 and 10, the hairpin, and then out of it onto the banking, the world-famous banking, which they hit at about 155 miles an hour and then build up to nearly 220.
Yes, the knock-on effect of those tight corners, unfortunately, has spoiled the fast corners. Let me explain. They're having to run so much downforce, so much wing angle to give them grip on the infield that it's made this, the last corner, turn 13 you're looking at now, such an easy corner for the Grand Prix drivers. The American people can't understand it. The drivers saying the banking is easy. Well, Indy cars are doing another 100 kilometers per hour, 60 miles an hour on the way through there, with a little T-tray of a rear wing for downforce. And look at the barn door on the back of that McLaren, and still Häkkinen was fighting to get the car into turn 4. A bit of a scruffy first sector then for Mika Häkkinen, but he's got clear track ahead of him.
And at the present moment, with just 2 minutes gone and another 58 minutes to go as Mika Häkkinen comes towards us, Jos Verstappen was fastest, and now Mika Salo has moved up ahead of him. Healthy crowd, as Martin has said, but the crowd expectation is for about 200,000 tomorrow, compared with some 400,000 when I was here in 93 for the Indy 500.
Yes, and the reason that nobody's completed a flying lap yet, Häkkinen, of course, will be the first to do so. The reason you're getting times is that from a standing start from the pit lane. The pit lane exit happens to be in line with the start-finish line timing beam, and that's why there's times up. But now Häkkinen should be showing us anytime soon a 1:16.1. That is not a particularly good first lap for Häkkinen, and Coulthard immediately in at a 15.1. That is more like it. We're expecting pole to be well into the 1 minute 14s, as long as it doesn't rain. And we spotted early on Hakkinen struggling in that first sector, and generally not a good lap. And Villeneuve goes second now, Hakkinen down to third, Pedro de la Rosa is fourth, Heidfeld in the Prost truly up into second place. It's all happening as they complete their first flying lap. But look, now Hakkinen's got it hooked up. He's obviously staying on for a second flyer, Murray.
Yeah, now this is the best possible thing that could happen for Formula One in America. The last thing we wanted is Rubens Barrichello now goes quickest. Was one of those intolerable 20-minute, half-hour delays waiting for everyone to come out. They're all pouring onto the track, 15 of them now, 16 of them. Rubens Barrichello is still quickest, but he's not going to be for very much longer because Mika Hakkinen has gone fastest in both the first two sectors. This circuit, 2.6 miles long, is like all of them, split into 3 sections for timing purposes. Mika Hakkinen flies out of turn 13, comes down towards the grid and over it, goes fastest with a 1 minute 14.6, which is the fastest lap we've had today, and actually the fastest lap we've had in the meeting, because Michael Schumacher did a 1:14.8 this morning. And Schumacher is still in the pits, still in the garage, sitting, waiting to see what happens. Hakkinen fastest. Barrichello out early, has put in a banker, 1/10 of a second slower than Mika Hakkinen, who is going slower, of course, on this lap. I'm expecting him to come in.
Well, they're now committed to no more than 3 runs. That second flying lap clearly prevents you having four complete runs on a 12-lap restriction, as they have here. They're all running the softer of the 2 harder compounds that are available, if that makes sense to you. 2 compounds available, a hard and a very hard. Schumacher has taken to the track. 19 drivers so far on the racetrack, 20 now with Schumacher, De Nitz and Frentzen yet to run. So Hakkinen on the provisional pole, Barrichello alongside him on the provisional front row, Coulthard and Jenson Button second row, Murray.
Yeah, now Rubens Barrichello, who's second fastest at the moment, 1/10 of a second slower than Mika Hakkinen. With this morning was 2/10 of a second slower than Schumacher. So with Schumacher out on the track now, he'll be putting in a very quick one to get something on the board before it rains, if it rains. There's no certainty that it will. But when it rains here, it rains very, very heavily indeed. Rained overnight, washed the circuit dry. Here is Michael Schumacher and Frentzen, as I talk to you. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who has yet to put in a full lap time, is certainly on a quick one. Michael Schumacher out of the first sector into the second one, which ends just after turn 10. That is the left-hander after the hairpin on this 13-corner circuit.
Yes, Frentzen has always been quick in that first sector, often the quickest. But Michael Schumacher's been tending to struggle in the mid-sector, and he has on this lap too. Schumacher not on a particularly good lap. He seems to be struggling in the tighter corners, and this may put him up onto the second row. I'm really not sure if it's going to do enough. So actually, that is an outlack.
Yeah.
He's still struggling in that middle sector, but now he's got time to get the tyre temperatures up and do something about it.
Right, now sector 1 ends just after turn 5. He's coming up to the 4th turn now. This could be the vital lap for Michael Schumacher, because it is starting to rain only 6.5 minutes into the session. We've spotted just a few spots of rain coming down, so Michael Schumacher needs to get this lap in really quickly indeed, and he's the fastest in the first sector. Faster than Mika Hakkinen was, faster than Rubens Barrichello was, faster than David Coulthard was. Now, this is the second sector that he's in now, approaching the hairpin, round, coming up towards the banking, some way yet though, because he's just rounded turn 9. This is turn 10, he's clear. Now, as you can see, he's 7/100ths of a second inside Mika Hakkinen's time, and if there's any rain, it's going to make things very difficult for all of them, and especially Hakkinen. This is the 13th and last turn of the track, and Michael Schumacher approaches the grid, flies over the line and goes into pole position, 2/10 of a second to the nearest 10th, faster than Mika Hakkinen.
Look at the spots of rain on the camera there, Murray, so I think Schumacher's picked absolutely the right moment to put that one in. He'll have been a little bit nervous with spots of rain on the visor, but the track has got enough residual heat in it to burn anything off of that nature at the moment, as long as it doesn't rain any harder. I would imagine if I was Hakkinen and co, I think I'd be going straight for my second run while everything is warm, even not bothering with any small changes. And Jenson Button is doing exactly that. Button then, the first to go for his second round, his second attempt of the afternoon.
Now this is one of the things that's going to be very hard for America to understand. Remember that Formula One is a whole new discipline to them. It is just as strange to them as their open-wheel B-class champ cars is to most of Britain. And it's going to seem very strange for them to see the cars sitting in the garages if the rain comes down. Although at the Indy circuit and all the super speedways and the ovals in particular, they do not race at all in the wet in America. And if it's wet tomorrow, it's going to be something for them to marvel at, to see those plumes of spray coming up from the wheels, and they travel at over 200 miles an hour down the straight. Now, 9 minutes have been completed. You're looking at Jacques Villeneuve. Michael Schumacher is still the fastest. Rubens Barrichello and Schumacher sandwich Mika Hakkinen. David Coulthard is fourth. Jenson Button is fifth, and Jarno Trulli is in sixth position. 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th, Frentzen, Villeneuve, Deniz and Pedro de la Rosa in the arrows. And everybody has put up a time. And everybody has qualified well within, at the present moment, the 107% of pole position time that they have to achieve to qualify.
And Hakkinen goes again, so Hakkinen out for his second attempt too. Both arrows leaving the pit lane, and no changes at the moment until they've managed to clear that outlap and get on with the serious stuff of their second attempt. So Button will be the first to do that. 15.1 he's done so far. I think that compares favourably with his best of the weekend. I don't think Jenson's been in the 14s yet, so he's matched his best through free practice, but he needs to bury the car well into the 1 minute 14s if he's going to get a second row slot. And he started the lap well. Jenson Button has already improved on his first sector, and we'll keep an eye out. Villeneuve has just popped up into 8th, teammate Zonta 9th in the other BAR.
Yeah, Ben Jenson Button only 1/10 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher in the first sector. We're looking at the young Englishman so now. Remember, he's on the same foot as everybody else here at Indianapolis. Nobody had driven here in a Grand Prix car before he had, and again he's gone faster in the second sector than he has done before. He's into the last sector now, out of the last bend. He's got to improve by half a second to move up. While his time improves, he remains in 5th position, half a second slower than Michael Schumacher, and considerably faster than his teammate, Ralf Schumacher, who's been walking around with a furrowed brow here, and he's 1.7 seconds off the pace.
And Coulthard out too now. So Coulthard currently in 4th place. He certainly needs to get ahead of Barrichello there in 3rd place. So it's Ferrari on pole, McLaren, Ferrari, McLaren, best of the rest, as he has been through free practice, Jenson Button.
Here's Rubens, 23.3 for the first sector, equaling Michael Schumacher, faster than Mika Hakkinen. Are we going to see 2 Ferraris on the front row of the grid, as we did at Monza in Italy, to the euphoric delight of the Tifosi, who subsequently saw Michael Schumacher win on their home turf?
This is going to put him on the front row, I think, Murray. I think Schumacher's got a couple of tenths over Mika Hakkinen at the moment. Barrichello, little work to do through those last 2 corners. Yes, indeed it does. Just pops him up onto the front row. So an all-scarlet front row at the moment, and they certainly seem to have been continuing the performance they showed through this morning. Early on, everybody was off the pace. Nobody could quite understand. Talking in the paddock, Murray, a lot of people were scratching their heads after free running this morning, wondering where the pace had gone to. I think it's a change of wind strength and wind direction that slowed them down. I do not believe it's mechanical grip on the track, but now we're seeing the fastest runs of the weekend.
Yeah, now this circuit has been likened to Hockenheim in that it is a very fast bit from turns 11 down through 12 and 13 down the long straight to turn 1, and then through the twisty bit. Hockenheim has the stadium and the long blast up through the forest and back again. Passing, Martin, on the way to turn 1, perhaps at the end of the fast straight. Any others?
I think that's the only serious opportunity they're going to have to pass. But from what I could see of early running, they can, because of the 9-degree banking, they can follow much better through turn 13, through the bank corner, onto the long straight. So we're not going to have the same old complaints of, well, I was in dirty air, my car understeered, I couldn't stay with him. And for sure, all of these cars will be carrying a lot less wing in the race, a lot less wing angle, so they can get more straight line speed. They'll have to compromise their lap in total, otherwise they'll just be sitting ducks, Murray, because they're going over the start-finish line at about 200 miles an hour, and then a few hundred metres later they're still only doing 200 miles an hour because they're carrying so much downforce and therefore drag.
Well, there's David Coulthard. He's on his 8th lap now. We've only had 14 minutes of this session, and because of their concern over the possibility of rain, they've got a lot of laps in very early. For instance, as I say, Coulthard's on his 8th lap. Hakkinen has done 7. Crafty old Michael Schumacher, or crafty young Michael Schumacher, has only done 3 laps, and that's given him pole position at the present moment. His teammate Barrichello has done 6 laps, and now Heinz-Harald Frentzen is in 6th position in the Jordan behind Jenson Button, 1 place ahead of his Jordan teammate Jarno Trulli.
Well, Coulthard's engineer will be watching his section times closely. He was a 10th slower on his first attempt, the first flying lap of this run. He may as well complete the 2 runs. He's half a second down. They'll have to call him in and try to save that lap for later on. And yes, indeed, Coulthard comes in. He's got 1 more run left this afternoon then, and that can have 3 flying laps in it. So Coulthard then deciding to abort that lap. I think there's more and more water falling down, Murray.
Yeah, so it's time we can have a little think now about who's doing well and who's doing not so well in terms of teams. Well, obviously Ferrari are going to be very happy, 1st and 2nd at the present moment. McLaren will be less happy, but they are on the 2nd row of the grid with Hakkinen and Coulthard. Williams will be delighted with Jenson Button, who's 5th. Ralf Schumacher not at all happy down in 14th place. And the 2 Jordans are 6th and 7th.
Yes, apparently, according to James, who's down in the pit lane, it's a fine drizzle, and they're all coming in now. It's going to be one of those qualifying sessions, I think, Mary, that was all action at the front, and now they may well just try and sit it out and see if this goes away. They're losing about half a second in the mid-sector. It's not much. Michael Schumacher on an out lap, but it's not much, but it's enough. They know they're just wasting their time. If they don't go faster, they obviously clearly are just wasting a valuable lap.
Perhaps we can do a bit of gossiping then. Bobby Rahal, a past winner here at the Indianapolis 500 and a team owner this year, has now been named by Jaguar to take over their Formula One team management next year. And he has said he's got no illusions about the fact it's going to be a very, very difficult job, but he intends to get Jaguar up to the front, and the very best of luck to him. So looking at Ferrari, so let's keep talking about Ferrari, because Alain Prost's team, the Prost team, is going to have a Ferrari engine next year, so hopefully it will go a lot better than it has this year.
Yes, Bobby Rahal said to me this morning that he's talking to 1 or 2 of the team bosses so they can let him know where the landmines are buried in Formula One. I said to him, take a very thick notebook with you. But Michael, look, very, very fast in the first section.
Yeah, I was sort of metaphorically freewheeling there, because I didn't realise, to be quite honest with you, just how quickly Michael was going. 23.2 seconds, a 1/10 of a second faster than he had been before, and he was the quickest. It really does look, if he keeps it up, as though he is going to improve on his provisional pole position time, and he would still have 6 laps to go at the end of this one. Now he's going faster and faster, because he is even more under his previous time as he comes out of the last corner. Look for him, he's doing about 155 miles an hour and building up to 200 over the line in just a few seconds. And Michael Schumacher, fastest in the first sector, fastest in the second sector, does not in fact improve his time. He misses it by 8/1000ths of a second.
Yes, Michael taking a very long, smooth route around high up on the 9-degree banking there of turn 13. And that cost him, actually. It cost him in the last sector. The others are sweeping down, using, if you saw the track guide from Jacques Villeneuve, using the slope to pick up speed. I think there's quite a technique, whilst the drivers are finding it easily full throttle, eating their sandwiches and reading a newspaper. There does appear to still be a technique to use that 9 degrees of banking to make the car accelerate, to free it up somehow. And Michael taking the long way round, and it didn't work out that time around. But he's still done the fastest and second fastest laps of the afternoon.
Yeah, he's looking very good indeed. Eddie Irvine has just improved. You're looking at him now from 18th to a provisional 12th position. They were really down the mine earlier this day, the two Jaguars, but they're improving now. Eddie Irvine then in 12th position, Johnny Herbert in 16th place.
Yes, that light drizzle has obviously faded away now, so a good time to be out on the racetrack. It brought all of those cars in quickly, but clearly it was just for a minute or a minute and a half, and now the track, as I said, there's a lot of residual heat in the racetrack, so any light drizzle like that is going to burn off in a short space of time. We've got 23 degrees centigrade on the track, so that's why Schumacher's been able to go out, and Irvine, and improve their time straight away.
Top driver of the day for me so far, not Michael Schumacher, nor Rubens Barrichello, or Mika Hakkinen, or David Coulthard, but Jenson Button, 5th position, and James Allen has news for us.
Yeah, a lot of discussion going on, as you can imagine, down in the McLaren garage. Adrian Newey, of course, has experience here at Indianapolis. He ran with the Indy cars many years ago. And I think part of the discussion is revolving around the balance from left to right-hand side of the car. With this banked oval, the tyre pressures, generally speaking, on the left-hand side, the tyres should be higher than the right-hand side tyres. That's certainly one area of discussion. Another one is the tyres. Which way to go on the tyres? Now, I know that Adrian Newey just went and checked what Ferrari were using, and Michael Schumacher went out with used front tyres and new rear tyres to try and combat an understeer problem, which it seems Hakkinen has the same problem, and I believe he's about to go out again doing what Michael's doing, used fronts, new rears.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens as a result of that as we ride with past Indy champion and Indy 500 winner Jacques Villeneuve in the BAR with the Honda engine, as you can see, 5 seconds off the pace as he comes round to tackle that very fast approach to the start and finish line.
Yes, coming in the pits while James was explaining the option there that Hakkinen has for tyres. We saw Villeneuve making a mistake on the way into turn 4, so aborting that lap. But it's a curious bit of voodoo, really, the chemical reaction between the tyre and the racetrack, and it changes through the day depending on temperature, depending on humidity, depending on so many things, and it is a little bit of a black science, if you'll excuse the pun. And sometimes if you just with the fresher rubber of the newness of the tyre, sometimes give you more grip, sometimes gives you less grip, and you can change the balance of the car slightly by, as James was explaining, using old tyres on the front, new ones on the rear. We're going to take a quick break.
Exactly 15.5 minutes left of the first qualifying session for a Grand Prix at Indianapolis as you look at Jos Verstappen, the Dutchman, in 13th place in the arrows. But the top 10 now, Michael Schumacher with Mika Hakkinen now alongside him on the front row of the grid, just under 0.2 of a second slower. Rubens Barrichello displaced to 3rd position. David Coulthard having a try now on his 10th lap out of the 12 he's allowed to move up from 4th position on the grid ahead of Jarno Trulli 5th. Jenson Button was displaced a little while ago by Trulli for that 5th position, but is still on the 3rd row in 6th place. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Trulli's teammate, is 7th. Jacques Villeneuve, who hoped to do a lot better than that, is 8th. Ralf Schumacher in the 2nd Williams is 9th, and Pedro Diniz, the fastest of the two Sauber drivers, is 10th.
Coulthard then on his final run of the afternoon, miles off in the first sector, over 0.4 off the pace. I couldn't really see why or how. He takes a much tighter line into turn 4. That's the only difference, but it doesn't appear to slow him down too much visually, but clearly he's losing 0.4 of a second somewhere. Now through 11th, he's gained again in the middle section. So he's got to find best part of, exactly in fact, 0.3 of a second from his best run, and he's coming in the pits. Coulthard abandoning that lap, clearly not happy with the car, and that means he still has one run available to him. because of laps he saved earlier on in the session. So Coulthard doing an out and an in and gets hauled into the weighbridge. Not too panicky though, because there's plenty of time, just under 14 minutes left to run. Coulthard can make another adjustment to that car. He's got one flying lap then available to him.
A good high shot there of Coulthard on the Grand Prix circuit inside turn 2 of the great super speedway at Indianapolis. And the amazing thing to me is that this 2.6 mile Grand Prix circuit is all inside the super speedway at Indianapolis, which is actually a slightly shorter lap length than the Grand Prix circuit. Seems strange, but it's the twisty bits that do it. And they've done, by general consent, an absolutely superb job. The quality of the construction and the engineering here is magnificent.
And look, they're changing the front wing there, just an easy adjuster now, a vernier style thing. And then they cover the wing back up again. That confuses me a bit. You do that in other Formula where you're racing against the same make of car. But other than the general overall level of wing that the cars are running, I don't see what you're giving away to your competitors.
They're paranoid.
It is a bit of paranoid. I think it's a bit of cat and mouse games, really. But, you know, a McLaren engineer cannot really look at that wing other than assessing the general level of downforce to say exactly how much it's got. And so I don't understand why they go to so much trouble to cover them up. But the wing levels they're running here, surprisingly, are along the lines they use at Spa and Manicourt, for example, much higher than we all expected. James, is that Ferrari?
Where the mechanics are just about to push the cars out, and I think Rubens Barrichello wasn't ready, but Michael was going to go out and do the ride in front of Rubens, I think. So something's gone wrong there in communication, because Michael was well ahead of Rubens, who still isn't off his jacks. Michael's gone back into the garage to have his engine fired up. I can tell you a little bit of insight I've gathered into the speed that Ferrari have managed to get today. Michael started this session with quite high downforce, and every run since he's just taken more and more and more wing off. And I think his fastest run was his third run, so he's learned a lot there. But I'll tell you another thing they've been doing today. They've obviously been running the car very, very low to the ground, because Nigel Stepney, the chief mechanic, has just checked the floor to make sure it's still legal, make sure it's still the requisite thickness. As out they come now, Schumacher leading Barrichello to pull him up, try and get him on the second row of the grid. But this car's obviously been bottoming out a lot, guys, and Stepney just checking it was still legal.
A word of explanation there about the floor thickness situation. All the cars have a composite or a wooden plank underneath them, and if that is worn more than a permissible amount, they have transgressed the regulations and can be wheeled out, as Michael Schumacher was in 1994 when he was with Benetton, and he actually lost a victory as a result of it. But both the Ferraris are out on the track now. Plenty of time left, just under 11 minutes, but they are on their last runs. Mika Salo is the man with the most laps left. He's 14th in the Sauber. Johnny Herbert has got 3 laps left in the Jaguar. He's down in 19th position. Eddie Irvine, his teammate, is only in 17th position. Jenson Button is in 6th place. David Coulthard is in 4th position. Who are going to be the top 3? Because can Barrichello get ahead of Mika Häkkinen in the last knockings of this session?
Yes, both Ferraris on track, line astern. Michael Schumacher is going to return the compliment and give Barrichello a slipstreaming tow down the final straight. Diniz improves from 10th to 9th. That's the best weekend he's had for a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. The Brazilian driver was a bit close with me today when I was talking to him, and I said, are you going on with Sauber or not? He's a man with a massive budget to spend on his drive. His father is an extremely wealthy supermarket owner in Brazil. But Pedro Diniz, who was a bit of a laughing stock, is no longer. He's a very capable midfield driver. And we're looking at Heinz-Harald Frentzen, as you can see for yourselves, trying to improve on 7th position. The 2 Ferraris passed our commentary box just a few seconds ago, and I'm looking for their first sector time as Frentzen improves his time but not his position. He's now on his 12th and last lap.
Yes, Jenson Button will be heaving a sigh of relief at that one. He is in a Jordan sandwich at the moment in 6th place, and they're all on 1 minute 15.0. It's incredible. It's 15.006 for Trulli, 15.017. Now it's coming up on the screen for Button, and 15.067 for Frentzen. Nothing between them. Button I'm sure, would fancy that 5th place.
Good time for Barrichello in the first sector. 23.3 seconds. Michael Schumacher, who is ahead of him, there is Schumacher, has just gone fastest in the second sector.
Yes.
This could turn out to be a surprise as we watch the Ferraris. They're coming through to complete the lap now. It's now or never for Rubens Barrichello, as over the line goes Michael Schumacher, and behind him Rubens Barrichello.
Yes, well, Rubens was too far behind. Michael was so quick in the first section. Rubens lost a couple of tenths, and the toe just didn't work. Michael just got on with it. It sort of almost, the payback didn't happen, really, in many respects. Barrichello too far behind to pick up the slipstream, but Michael did not improve his time, nor did Barrichello. Their laps are out. Really now, the only man... There's 2 people that can... 3, in fact, sorry. 4th, 5th and 6th. Coulthard, Trulli and Button, who have some ammunition left to have one final attempt in this last 8 minutes.
Well, that's nice for us because it means the track hopefully will be pretty clear for them, and 3 very interesting personalities from our point of view. David Coulthard from Twynham up in Scotland, Jenson Button from Bicester, Jarno Trulli, the Italian, and James Allen, the Englishman, has got news for us.
Yes, Adrian Newey, the technical director of McLaren, has been moving like a shuttlecock between the 2 cars of Häkkinen and Coulthard, either side of the McLaren garage. He's coordinating some sort of operation here, whereby one of the 2 drivers is going to help the other. Now, which would you go for, Murray and Martin? Would you try and get Coulthard up towards the front to join Häkkinen, or would you try and get Häkkinen onto the pole?
Can answer that reasonably easy, James. Häkkinen doesn't have enough laps left. He's done 10 laps. He does not have enough for a flying lap in there. So they can only really send Häkkinen out to help leapfrog Coulthard up. But anything they can do to get Michael Schumacher off that pole, they'll be trying to do, I'm sure. But at least they need Coulthard ahead of Barrichello. So if he does have to play team games in the race to help Häkkinen in the championship, Coulthard is nearer the action.
Yeah, David Coulthard has actually got 2 pole positions already this year at Silverstone and in France. But he's got to make a mighty improvement. He's 6/10 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher at the present moment. As we look at Jarno Trulli coming through to complete that first sector, only 1/10 of a second off the pace. Now he is in 5th position. If he can improve by 1/10 of a second, he'll actually bump David Coulthard from 4th position, unless the Scotsman can improve himself. So we're in for a pretty exciting last few minutes. 6 minutes left in the session. Jarno Trulli in sector 2, on his way to the exit from turn 10, which is where that sector ends and leads into the bank section of the course. And he's keeping up that time extremely well. Call it 3/10 of a second off. That could move him up. He can still move up into 4th position on the grid. Out of the last corner, the speed is building all the time. He's got a nice line there. Goes right up alongside the wall.
No, he didn't
and
improve.
Fails to improve.
Very slow through the last sector for whatever reason. The IndyCar boys stay away from those walls. I think there's a cushion of air that rides along with the car when it's doing 200 miles an hour, obviously. And now we're left, really, with just 3 drivers with any laps left. David Coulthard, Jenson Button and Ralf Schumacher, the only 3 drivers that can effectively be on the racetrack at the end. Häkkinen could go out to give Coulthard the slipstream down the pit straight.
And Ralf Schumacher, who is well behind his teammate Jenson Button, 20-year-old Jenson Button, and Ralf Schumacher is just 25 years old. He was almost the baby of Formula One last year, and he's the old man in the team now, and that's what Jenson calls him, jokingly. They get on very well together. Ralf Schumacher then, all right, he's 23.5 in the first sector, which is about what you'd expect him to have done if he's going to...
Oh, he's going to spin. Yeah, just lost the back end again on the way in. I don't think he's going to make contact with anything, but has he stalled the engine? No, he hasn't. He just put his head down trying to find neutral, and he's got to pass through that. These are such clumsy cars to get into reverse gear. It really is a question of just concentrating just to make sure you don't stall that engine. Look, he had a little jink to the right. The car was slightly unbalanced before he started the turn to the left. Back end a bit light, on the downshift and the brakes, and Ambition got ahead of Adhesion, and there he goes with a nice little pirouette across the grass.
Ambition got ahead of adhesion. I like that. So we've got the usual position at the front, to be honest, in terms of constructors. 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris, and they're equally spread. The 2 top men of the year so far, Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen, fighting for the World Championship in this tomorrow, the 15th race of the year out of 17, with the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka on October the 8th and the Malaysian Grand Prix at Sepang on October the 22nd to follow.
2 Maccas then coming out of the pit lane, 2 McLarens line astern, and it's Coulthard in front of them at the moment. I would imagine Häkkinen will get ahead on the track and give Coulthard a major tow down that long, virtually a kilometre-long straight, heading down into turn 1 and jink out of the way. Häkkinen does not have a flying lap available to him. He will have to pit after he can do an out and then an in, but he cannot do a flying lap, so he can only be out there to give Coulthard a bit of a leg up.
Well, let's hope for David Coulthard's sake that he gets more value out of Mika Häkkinen than Rubens Barrichello got out of Michael Schumacher, who sprinted off for whatever reason, and Rubens Barrichello was not able to benefit from the tow. Johnny Herbert now is on his last lap into the pit lane. He's done his 12 laps, as Häkkinen, as far as I know, is still leading David Coulthard. I can't see him any more than you can. Now I can.
Yes, we can't see from here which McLaren's in front, but unless Häkkinen is in front, and now we're going to see the swap. They're going quite slowly, considering it's now Coulthard's still in front. There he goes. He's having to let Häkkinen through now. So Häkkinen, I think, will give what I would do is give him a tow down the first straight and then get out of the way. Either that or he may... No, he can't go down the straight twice. Häkkinen can only go down the straight once anyway. Otherwise, he'll be overlapped. Too many laps. And yes, he's going to tow him down the first straight and get out of the way and give Coulthard a nice, clear run into turn 1. And... well, David was just a touch too close, but still a good slipstream there. And then Häkkinen, exactly as I thought, just moves out of the way. As long as David doesn't outbrake himself on the way in, he will have had a small advantage. Let's see if it got him up onto the timing screens. I don't think it would for maximum speed. The McLarens are running so much wing, but yes, Coulthard did. He did get a good run down that straight. Nothing sensational in terms of straight line speed, but better than they have been doing. And can he? Yes, he's 23.2. That matches just about by, except for 46 thousandths of a second, the current pole sitter's first section time. That's 4 tenths up on Coulthard's best so far. So it did help him down the straight, and now he's really got to hook it up through the middle sector where he was so fast yesterday, and that then should give him a clear run at second or third place on the grid. Be a bit galling for Mika Häkkinen if he helps David Coulthard knock him off the front row.
Oh, look at that!
He's 2 thousandths up.
Yeah, and he's faster than Michael Schumacher. He could be taking pole position. This would be really incredible. David Coulthard then looking possibly as though he's going to have his 3rd pole position of the year. And it would be magnificent if he did it here at Indianapolis as a result of his cooperation with Mika Häkkinen.
Second.
And he does not. Second on the grid. So it is Ferrari fastest, McLaren second, McLaren third. David Coulthard ahead of Mika Häkkinen. Exactly, Martin, what you said Mika Häkkinen wouldn't like. Rubens Barrichello is 4th in the Ferrari. Jarno Trulli and Jenson Button are still 5th and 6th.
Oh, Button still the only man now left with any action is Jenson Button. He is on his flying lap. 0 seconds left, just the flag just going out. Can Button do anything about Trulli? It's all about Jenson Button now. There, we finally pick him up. Can he snatch that 5th place off of Trulli? I do not see him making 4th. From Barrichello. He's got to find some 4 tenths of a second, and he's pretty much been around the 14.9, 15.0, and he's 7 tenths down. He's at a very bad mid-sector, so mistake from Button in the mid-sector, so the grid is fixed, Murray.
Yeah, Jenson Button then comes through to complete his 12th lap in the qualifying session at Indianapolis for tomorrow's American Grand Prix. And sure enough, he retains his 6th position. Top 10 on the grid then for tomorrow. Michael Schumacher and David Coulthard, 1st and 2nd respectively. Fastest and 2nd fastest for Ferrari and McLaren. and then McLaren and Ferrari, Mika Häkkinen and Rubens Barrichello. So it's going to be a mighty interesting and exciting start to tomorrow's race, because after the long run down to turn one, they have an acute right-hander, as they did at Monza, but there is a very different situation. There's a big run-off, a bigger run down to turn two, and hopefully they will all get round together tomorrow. So in fifth position, Jarno Trulli, then Jenson Button, and Hans-Harald Frentzen is seventh. So with the two Jordans, 5th and 7th, they've done better than they have in the recent past. Jacques Villeneuve is 8th, and to complete the top 10, Pedro Diniz an excellent 9th, and Ralf Schumacher is in 10th position. There is your confirmation of the top 10, and you can see that there's just 1.2 seconds covering the top two, but more importantly, only 0.3 of a second covering the top four. There's a half-hour practice session tomorrow morning, 4 hours before the Grand Prix itself, and the teams will be working very, very hard indeed to perfect their setup.
So 7th pole position of the year for Mike Schumacher, as they like to call him out here. Let's just go through the second half of the field. Wirtz 11th, Zonta, Verstappen, Salo, Fisichella, Heidfeld, Irvine in the first of the Jaguars in 17th, Della Rosa, Herbert and Lacey, and 21st and 22nd, the two Minardis of Mazzacani and Genet.
Well, that's it then, and another one for Ferrari, and remember that Mika Häkkinen now is on the second row of the grid, so what happens between Schumacher, Coulthard and Häkkinen, and of course Rubens Barrichello, who so magnificently won a Grand Prix this year already in Germany, is going to be more than interesting. Michael Schumacher, his usual smiling self, he's got everything to look very pleased about. His 6th pole position of the year.
Joy for Michael Schumacher at Indianapolis with a helping hand from teammate Rubens Barrichello. He is on pole for the American Grand Prix. Here's the top three in the press conference.
Michael, you were either very, very brave, or you must have had a very accurate weather forecast, the way you sat there and let everyone go out for that first run before we went out. How did you know it wasn't going to rain?
I was hoping. Usually, circuit is anyway a little bit slow initially. And no, I was confident it's not going to rain, honestly. Even though when I went out, I got few spots on my visor, I got concerned. So I pushed a bit harder to finish the lap early, to get in one lap.
The last two runs you did, you went out together with Rubens. Were you looking to get a good tow down the straight and swap it between yourselves?
Basically, yes. I mean, you have such a long straight here, so we play a bit of team tactics, as the other two guys did in the end.
Now, once again, you're fastest in qualifying, but yesterday, which was sort of race setup day, you weren't as quick as the McLarens. Are you happy you've got a good race setup for tomorrow?
Don't worry. Yes.
Thank you, Michael. David, you just missed getting the pole position, but it was some great teamwork there. Whose idea was it to send Mika out with you for those last two laps he had left over?
My idea. Well, it was my idea. Actually, Adrian came across and said, would it help if Mika gave you a tow? To which the obvious answer is, of course, yes, it would help. And I think the way we did it worked quite well for me, so I'm not sure how much time it gained me, but it certainly gained me a little bit down the straight.
Now, it's pretty obvious that there is a very considerable tow down this straight, and from the speed trap times, you guys are running a lot more wing during qualifying. Do you expect everyone to take wing off for the race to make advantage of that speed, straight line speed?
I think it will be, although this is a longer straight than we have or longer amount of flat out, 100% throttle than we have at other tracks, I think the same sort of strategy for race setup will apply, because you still need to get through the infield section. So yes, there probably will be some wing taken off, but you want to make sure that you've got the quickest race car.
Thanks, David. Mika, your selfish act of helping David meant you've dropped down a place. Are you disappointed?
No, not really, no.
You do it again?
It depends the situation, of course, but this time it was actually it was ideal, and looking at the starting grid anyway, it is a bit weird because they have this old tarmac, well, what we call it, you know, old road, old track on the surface on the starting grid. So when you do your start, you're going to lose the traction very easily going over those little bumps. So maybe the second row is not too bad after all.
Now, you've helped David today, but tomorrow in the race of the championship, do you expect a bit of payback? Do you think he'll help you?
Well, at the moment we go there to race, tomorrow we go there to win. Me and also the David. So we'll see how the race will go on, and we have to understand what chances we have, which positions we have able to get, and let's see how the race develops.
All of them a little bit guarded in the press conference, but Tony, when Michael Schumacher says don't worry and gives that little smile, the rest of them do worry, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I mean, he means business when he does that little confident grin and whatever, because they've done a great deal of work back at Mugello, back at Fiorano, leading up to this race. All on computer simulation, don't forget, because none of them have been here before. These super hard, thick carcassed Bridgestone tyres which they've been using. Bridgestone has said you've got to run much higher pressures, which means they're very, very hard. And there's normally a bit of give in the tyres as part of the suspension movement because there's not much movement. So they've done a very, very good job. Their engineers have done a tremendous job. And Michael Schumacher is on a high.
It seemed to me that Michael Schumacher always had control of this session, though, Tony.
Yeah, he did. The car looked very stable. He's been strutting his stuff. And as James noted during the qualifying session, he'd been backing off wing each time they've gone out, in contrast to McLaren, who've kept their wing on. And it really is a circuit of two halves, almost 50% on the long straight, 50% on the infield. So what do? You've got to either have a compromise or you go really, really brave with low wing.
How about the World Championship favourite Mika Hakkinen? Will he be disappointed ending up on that second row?
No, I think it's tactical. I think he wants to avoid the bricks on the front row. I think they did have problems with where they were putting the tyres. I think the fact that they've had to compensate and put softer springs on because of these very, very hard tyres means they've had a different sort of McLaren to cope with. And they have struggled a little bit behind for a Ferrari, but you saw there Hakkinen way up high on the white line, coming in low on a super slingshot and grabbing that second place. An excellent job by Hakkinen.
We've talked a lot about team orders in that McLaren team. It's ironical, isn't it, that David Coulthard would appear to have benefited from a bit of help from Mika Hakkinen.
Yeah, Mika with a silver plate saying, yo, go and have the front row. I don't subscribe to that view. I think that here, this was a deliberate ploy. You're going to see the two teammates in Ferrari and McLaren working for each other during the race because of the long straights, because of the slipstreaming or the drafting as it's called here in American racing. Now, I think that was to get David Coulthard up onto the front row because his job will be to push Michael Schumacher. Perhaps Coulthard will go out on a lower fuel load, a different fuel strategy to Hakkinen to try and strain that Ferrari engine, try and goad Schumacher into really going for it in the American Grand Prix.
Just spell out exactly for us, Tony, why it's happened here, teammates giving each other a tow and nowhere else.
There is Lisa Dennis there just doing the big congratulations for her team. It's because of the long straights. It's because it's very wide, because they see lots of opportunities for overtaking as well, even on some of the wider infield sections, that they feel it is not that critical to be on the pole position. They're thinking about the long term, the race, the strategy. Where do I need to be positioned? And clearly Hakkinen's thinking about just about the traction away from the start, what Coulthard can do for me.
We chatted to him before the qualifying session. We have to give him another big tick, don't we, today? I'm talking about Jenson Button, of course.
Great tradition of British drivers here at the Brickyard at Indianapolis. We've got Graham Hill winning in 66, you've got 65, Jim Clark winning. Jenson Button has taken to part of the Indianapolis circuit and the other part, the infield section, like a duck to water. Very quick, early out of the blocks. Tremendous job from him. I'm very, very pleased for Jenson Button. And that's all with Montoya in his pit, some of the headsets on.
Driven on by Montoya being there, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right, then let's have a word with Jenson Button, shall we? Excellent performance. 6 on the grid, and here he is chatting to Louise.
Jenson, well on third row of the grid. Are you pleased with that?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I would have liked to have been on the second row. That's where we were this morning, but sixth row's good. Very good, sixth.
Tell me about that last run. Did you think you could improve a bit?
Yeah, but I think I pushed a bit too hard. The team always say just push as hard as you can, and if you go off, you go off. But I think I pushed a bit too hard and got a bit wild, but there you go.
But still very well placed for tomorrow.
I think it's good. I'm very pleased to be in the top 6 again, and you never know, maybe we can get some good points tomorrow, we'll see.
Williams finishing the season very well indeed. It'll be a particular pleasure to Jenson Button that he has out-qualified Ralph Schumacher.
Yeah, it will. I mean, after his great third place at Spa, you know, Ralph has thought about all that. But Ralph really does like Jenson Button. And he's been quick to say, I would like him to stay. But, you know, here is Ralph getting it wrong. When Ralph gets it wrong and he gets out of sync and he drops his head a bit, he tends to get a little bit angry with himself, angry with the engineers, whatever, and things tend to go from bad to worse. And, you know, that will have played on his mind a bit. The kid's ahead of me again, the kid, the 20-year-old, you know.
When we emerge from the studio, the Americans will be asking you and me, what's happened to those Jaguars?
Oh, it's sad, isn't it? It's unfortunate because, you know, it's a big market for them here in the States, and there's a lot of Union Jack waving fans here. And this was an in-lap, a bit of a loss of concentration there from Eddie Irvine on the way back in, but a lot of the big wigs, a lot of the big hitters here to watch them. And there he is down in 15th place in the Jaguar.
3 to go, including, of course, this one here. This is a big, big race as far as the championship's concerned, Tony.
You have to say now, as Ross Brawn has said, it's a 3-race championship. This is it, all the way down to the wire now. And as Ron Dennis has said, it only takes one thing, Hackett and Schumacher come together, and then David Coulthard's back in it. It could be a 3-man race.
You never know. And your thoughts on the race, finally?
It's so hard to predict. I think it's going to be so close. But I would say Schumacher at the moment might just edge it.
He's looking good, isn't he? Let's just confirm how the grid looks for you. Schumacher and David Coulthard up front. Second row, Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren. Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari. The big two dominating as always here. Jarno Trulli has done really well to get the Jordan up there on the third row. Jenson Button alongside him in the Williams. Frentzen in the second Jordan in 7th place. And Jacques Villeneuve, driven here before but not in a Formula 1 car, gave us our track guide as well. He's up there on the 4th row, and disappointment, as we've been saying, from Irvine and Herbert in those Jaguars. So there we are, the race live on ITV2, 6 o'clock on Sunday. 10:45, the whole race is on ITV, and the highlights on Monday morning, the early hours, 3:35 on ITV, and the highlights repeated, as always, at 7 o'clock Monday evening on ITV2. It's been a late one for you, I know. Thanks very much indeed for your company. Be sure to join us here for race day. Good night to you all.